Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Devotional Anarchy podcast. And this is the first of a series of master classes on intimacy, trauma, money, embodied wealth, and the nervous system. And this correlates with my new offer, which is a 3-month one-on-one container for spiritual entrepreneurs wanting to change their money stories, like really wanting to shift into their next level of wealth calibration and embodiment of wealth, like really being able to receive, hold, and manage their finances in a different way. And what's included in this 3-month package is our 6 somatic one-on-one calls. And in those calls, we dismantle your unconscious money stories. We really get to the source of what's tripping you up in your finances or in your business finances. And we do that using my 5-pillar process of nervous system capacitation and resilience. And with that, you also get a free 90-minute financial needs analysis where we calculate all your monthly expenses. We gather all your assets and establish what your retirement needs are. How much money do you need to make, right, to be able to retire, like really breaking it all down. And then after that, you get a 90-minute comprehensive financial strategy based on the financial needs analysis. And basically that is about creating that roadmap to the life and business that you want. Then in addition to that, you also get my mini course, Flex, the 5 pillars to nervous system capacitation and resilience. So we're doing that in the sessions, but you also have sort of the theoretical foundations in a course so that you can continue doing the work after you and I have finished, doing our sessions together. So the thing is, you can get those last 3, the course, the financial needs analysis, and the comprehensive financial strategy. You can get those for free. Just go to my website and access the course, and then click the Google form in the show notes, or you can access the link to the Google form in my IG profile to get on my calendar. So the investment for this 3-month package is $1,800 pay in full, or $600 a month for 3 months. So what you're really paying for are the somatic calls and the integration of what we do on the somatic calls with the comprehensive financial strategy I lay out for you. So in this episode, I'm going to give you sort of a foundation to the transformation you can expect inside of wealth. So a lot of the stories that we have about money are obviously beliefs that we hold in our mind, things we've heard from our parents, like sort of the repetitive scripts, the conditioning, things we absorb from our interactions with society. But what really gets us tripped up are the unconscious and epigenetic transfers we receive from our ancestral lines, right? So I want you to understand that these beliefs, they're sort of passive. They live like unchallenged assumptions in the shadow, right? In your shadow awareness, right? And in sort of this, in our nonverbal sort of cellular memory, which makes them harder to detect. And sometimes we need that other person to kind of like see it, because we don't see it, right? It's designed so that it remains unseen. And one of the ways I help you uncover your money patterns is to look at how your relationship patterns are playing out with your money. So before I get into that, I first want to address some of the sociopolitical realities of money and how they might impact your capacity to receive, to hold, and to move money or to manage money. So obviously money is correlated with well-being. That's what sort of all the research shows. It's associated with less physical and emotional stress because obviously you have more access to resources. Money has been concentrated in whiteness, in the elite, in maleness. People of color and women have been barred access to money, often violently. Money has been corrupted. It's been used, to exploit. It's filled with story, right? It's like overlaid with all sorts of like, yeah, just it's encrusted with sort of all of these corrupt concepts, right? And so I want to say with all that is like money is filled with trauma. The reason why our relationship with money is so charged because we are actively being traumatized by how money is moved in our society, how we relate to money, or how banks control money, right? Through the money system, we are actively being traumatized. So we've learned to distrust money, right? We've learned to distrust how money's been used, but we sort of, instead of looking at the system, we sort of blame it on money itself, right? And we also like specifically fear the loss of money. We fear losing money, much in the same way we fear losing love in our relationships, because it's connected to safety and security. And of course, like, when you are, pleasing other people at the expense of yourself, what you're doing, you understand what you're doing, and you're telling yourself to stop, but you're doing it because you're so afraid of losing those relationships, right? This is why it's important to look at this from the attachment system perspective. And of course, these fears may be exacerbated through experiences your family might have had around money, like they had it and then they lost it suddenly, right? They could have lost it to a natural disaster, or they lost it to a regime, like a political regime, or I don't know, some political upheaval, right? Or there was mental illness in your family, and there were continual boom and bust cycles that occurred, right? It's like, oh, we have so much money and we can spend, and all of a sudden, like, oh, no, we have to tighten our belts, right? It's so expansion and contraction, sort of in extreme ways. You may have been exposed to the anxiety of your parents, fearing money running out, right? And living in constant fear of it running out, and being like, oh, no, we can't spend it. We can't do this. We can't do that, right? Sort of the limitation and the contraction around that. Also, you might have been exposed to fights around money, arguments. And maybe there was somebody in your family that was spending too much, or someone saving, and they had very different ways of dealing with money or relating to money that created those clashes. And then on the level of sex and gender, think about the choices the women in your life had to make because of money, right? A lot of times women had to be dependent. They had to stay in marriages that were unsatisfying because they weren't able to, make it on their own. They weren't able to, raise children and then also work outside the home, right? Especially, some decades ago. So they might have had to stay in abusive relationships, right? What aspects of their dreams and desires did they have to let go of in order to feel safe and secure, that their basic needs were cared for, right? And this is important to take into account because, again, safety and security, it all comes back to safety and security. So for now, just notice, from what I've said, notice the things that are coming up, that are pinging in your system. Maybe write them down or put like a star next to them. And because of the sociopolitical realities of money, women typically don't have the same capacity, or have not had the opportunity to develop that same capacity to receive and hold money like men have. Like men have had more time to build a healthy entitlement to money. The part of them that says like, yeah, I can have this, like that inherent deserving, like, yeah, why not? Why can't I live well? Or why can't I charge this amount of money? Women are still sort of grappling with like, oh, can I charge that? Is that okay? Am I allowed? Right? All of those, that internal sort of rumination we experience. And I know, plenty of men who also struggle in their relationship with money, because intimacy wounds really dictate your relationship with money much more than your gender does, right? Because intimacy wounds are, again, unconscious, right? They're socialized, but sort of on a more implicit level versus explicit. So let me talk a little bit about money and attachment. Often our relationship we have with money is similar to the relationship we have with our parents, right? It's like anything else, right? When you think about money, I want you to replace it with the word love and see how that shows up in your energetic dynamic to it, how you relate to it, right? Are you sort of like avoidant of like, are you an avoidant person in love? Like, do you push intimacy away? And then ask yourself, do you push money away? Right? Or do you want like, oh, like I'm so wanting to be in a relationship and I love and see how that if there's a sort of a grasping aspect to your relationship with money. And if in your family, for example, you experienced a lot of boom and bust cycles around money, think about that as maybe having had love and then losing love and then having it again and then losing love, right? So you might not be willing or as willing to give your heart because you might lose the person, right? So that translates into you maybe not being willing to want money. You may not want to even receive money because you may fear losing it, right? Or when you get money, you might hang on to it really tight. And the same works in reverse. Like, let's say you experience some form of neglect or abandonment in your childhood, you may also neglect taking care of your money. You may neglect creating stability for yourself financially in a variety of ways. You might fear money leaving you in the same way you felt love left you, or never came to you. Or when it came to you in like small little drips, right? Not sort of big gulps, right? So it was more of a drip wise, right? And sort of underneath that, there may be like a deep longing to be held, to be held by life, by the universe, by a partner, and then by money as well, which is then why you may not take care of yourself, because you want somebody else to do it. You want somebody else to step in because you're exhausted from doing it yourself, right? There's this place inside of you, this like small self, maybe a young part, that is just like, oh, I don't want to have to do this anymore. This feels so like taxing. I just want somebody just kind of to wrap themselves around me and just like hold me. So, and there's also like, it can also come up in ways where, like in sort of in a more avoidant attachment style, you may say something like, oh, I don't need money. You may have stories about money being corrupt. Like, you may believe sort of all the ways money has been used. You may sort of blame money for how money has been used. And you're like, well, I don't really need it. I'll do it less. I'm fine, right? And you don't ever allow yourself to feel the longing of like something bigger, right? Or like your havingness level or your havingness levels are sort of atrophied, and it's like, no, only this much is good. And I don't need, right? And so you're denying your need. You're denying the part of you that has a desire for something more. And, that might cause you to underprice your offers. You end up, creating a business that's maybe not sustainable for you, right? Where you're extracting from yourself because the system has been extractive, right? And so you're not going to be extractive to other people. You're going to be like, well, I'm not going to charge a rate that's like, it feels like too much, but then you're extracting from yourself instead. So it's not balanced. So all of these experiences with personal, collective, generational trauma limit our capacity to receive abundance. We have capacity for different things, right? Some have a really big capacity to be able to manage stress, right? And like what feels like a lot for one person is different for another, right? For example, like a big amount of money, let's say, I don't know, $20,000 in your savings account might be like, oh my God, I have so much money in my savings account. Another person would be like, yeah, that's kind of like regular, right? It all depends on some of the experiences you had growing up, again, these implicit expectations, these assumptions that we have about what a lot is, what a little is, right? So it's really different, and childhood experiences do matter. So what happens when you receive more than what you're capable of holding, right? What happens when your capacity is the size of this measuring cup and you get sort of this bucket full, right? So it's going to overflow the cup, right? You might overspend it, you might mismanage it. We've all heard about like lottery winners who have squandered their winnings, right? Because it's like their container for holding, it just can't, it's not big enough, right? And by spending, your nervous system is doing something very wise, right? It's making sure that the amount is receiving matches its capacity, right? So that it's equal, right? And so it's like the water flowing out of this measuring cup. Eventually it'll top off. The water will have just sort of fallen away, and then it's be like, okay, yeah, well, this is the size of my container. This is about the amount of money I can hold. And thinking again of the nervous system, right? Like you all know about fight, flight, fawn, freeze, free, I want to make it even more basic though. Because, we're talking about fear, right? We're talking about at the very basis of our relationship with money, at the very basis of safety and security is fear, right? So we have to talk about fucking fear. And when you think about fear, like bodies do two different things. They either go into hyper arousal or they go into hypoarousal, right? So hypoarousal is a little bit of a shutdown state, a little bit of a freeze state, where the fear activates the freeze, and sometimes fear activates anxiety, which is hyperarousal, right? Sometimes in hyperarousal, you'll have unclear thoughts, you'll experience confusion, maybe distress, right? The fear response is activated sort of in an acceleration kind of way. In hypoarousal, your fear sort of activates more of a like a numbing effect, right? So it's like there's more neglect, there's more avoidance, there's more like pushing away, right? So when you think about your relationship with money, do you lean more into hyperarousal or hypoarousal? Sort of look and see sort of where you fall on and maybe it's in different situations you go into hyper, and maybe different situations you go into hypo, right? But just it's a nice way to sort of like, it's just two options, like where do you go? All right, so I want to talk about attachment, right? These really fundamental 5 intimacy archetypes and how they relate to money. This is like the juiciest work ever. And then I'm going to finish up with, some of the things that I want you to be tracking with your money. So the 5 intimacy archetypes, the first one is the creative archetype. This is maybe, someone who experienced, like if you've experienced neglect in your childhood, or you feel sort of like this, I want you to think of this as like, like in Ayurvedic medicine, you have your different, I forget what they're called. They're all these the different body types, right? So the creative is sort of like experienced neglect, is sort of like a sort of hypersensitive. And we all have aspects of each archetype, right? We aren't just one archetype. We are combinations, but we do dominate in one or two. So in the creative archetype, you might neglect money, you might minimize its importance in your life, you might deny yourself like luxury experiences. And you really need to learn that it's safe to care for money, and that money can care for you. And that when you care for money, you are caring for yourself. So this is sort of a more hypo response to money. There's a little bit more of a shutdown, a little bit more of avoidance, right? And it's like, maybe in that creative archetype, you're more sort of in the spiritual realm of things versus like the concrete nuts and bolts of investing. It's kind of like, oh, I get so turned off with that part. So the lover archetype is maybe someone who didn't receive enough attention, love, maybe didn't get their needs met fully, tends to merge in relationships, right? There's sort of a little bit of an anxious attachment. So it's a little bit of a hyper arousal, can sometimes hoard money, maybe grasps, maybe is feeling like it's never enough and I have to scramble for it. There's this energy of desperation. And it can also flip in the opposite direction where, there may be overindulgence or maybe accumulating debt, right? And then having sort of leaks in your cash flow. So the work for the lover archetype is to embrace enoughness, to really understand from a body sense that abundance flows from sufficiency, that there's usually always enough, right? And that, letting yourself, saving for the things that really matter to you, letting yourself have it, letting yourself, if you tend to be sort of a scarce person, letting yourself really enjoy having and holding it without necessarily spending. So in the endurer archetype, the third archetype, this was someone who was over-controlled in their childhood. They had to sort of deny pretty fundamental parts of who they were. They had to deny their assertiveness. So there may be this hyper arousal around working hard for money, because they had to learn to they're hard workers. And so their hyper arousal is I have to make money. I have to survive. I have to do hard things. Let's get to work, right? But they have a hypo arousal experience around enjoying it. They don't experience a lot of pleasure around having money. They don't really feel like it could come easy to them. Right? So it's they have to feel like they have to work really hard, and they don't enjoy when they have it, because it's just well, I just need to go get more, because I just need to they're a little bit in that hamster wheel kind of mentality. And then the fourth archetype is the challenger archetype. This is someone who may have experienced manipulation in their childhood, may have had sort of hot and cold parents. There were power and control dynamics, maybe around money, maybe around love, right? So there's this hypo in terms of receiving, yeah, I can receive, there's no issue receiving. But when it comes to, hey, let's give to this charity, or let's do this, or let's move it around, there's a little bit of a hyper arousal response. So there's a difficulty surrendering, letting go, trusting it's going to come back to you, right? This person might equate money with power. They make money pretty easily, but they tend not to share it as much, because that activates the fear, the anxiety that it won't come back. And obviously this person has to learn that it's safe to share it, to redistribute it, that it'll come back to you, right? That fundamental trust, that safety, that it's yeah, I can give it away, and it's just, there's enough, right? There's enough to go around for everyone. I can share my power. I don't have to hoard my power. And finally, for the fifth archetype, it is the rigid archetype. This is where, a situation where attention and love was focused more on performance than on simply being. Maybe there was a betrayal of the heart, right? Maybe you may have difficulty receiving. You feel like you need to be good in order to receive. There's quite a bit of shame attached to who you are versus who you think you need to be in order to make money. So there's this hyper arousal experience around making money. So again, it's really all about ultimately about safety and trust, right? With all of the archetypes. And notice what's coming up for you as I go through each of these. Notice which resonate more, which don't, right? How some of these dynamics are showing up with your money. Now, here's the fun part. I want you to think of money as your lover, as your ideal partner. I want you to imagine your partner as, I want you to imagine the spirit of money as your partner. And, you can imagine them however you want. You can imagine them as an angelic being, or as a human figure, It doesn't matter, whatever works for you, whatever makes it like fun, whatever makes it exciting for you, because we want to get excited about receiving, because where there's pleasure, it sort of like dissipates and softens the fear. So if you want to imagine them as a hunky metrosexual, or, you know, a gorgeous non-binary goddess, right? Like, you know, a spiritual type, you know, like a long-haired dude, I don't know, whatever. If you want to just imagine them however you want and really flesh it out, whatever it is for you, really flesh it out, really get into the details. And I want you to ask yourself, when you imagine the spirit of money or relating to the spirit of money, what is your underlying need in this relationship? What is your underlying need, like your deep need? Like, not when you say like, oh, I need this person to do this in order for me to be okay. No. What is your underlying need, the profound soul level need, right? Is it connection? Is it communion, like spiritual communion, oneness, love, acceptance, belonging, safety? Are you able to let this person, the spirit of money, love you? Like, what would it be like to let the spirit of money really love you and just shower you with attention, just like be so attentive and loving and checking in with you and asking, what do you need from me? How can I support you? And I want you to imagine yourself responding to those questions, imagining the spirit of money in front of you. Can you receive their love and their, you know, undying devotion? Can you receive them? Is there any part of you that kind of where you feel a little bit of a jerk back in your system, right? In your nervous system going, right? Like contracting a little bit? Is there any part of you that wants to push them away? And if this were your ideal partner, what would you create together? What would you create with the spirit of money? Right? If the spirit of money is just going to be like showering you with just abundance, what would you create with that? So when I think about the manifestation process, right? It's a process of becoming, right? This is what we'd be doing together on the somatic calls is really like unfolding, right? Or opening your becoming process, accelerating your becoming process by bringing awareness to these parts. Because in order for you to receive money and hold money and manage money, you have to be someone who is available to have a relationship with it, to receive it, right? To let it in. And there are parts of us that don't allow it in, and we're not aware of those parts. This is what the uncovering is all about. So as you move forward in your business, I want you to be tracking some of what I talked about today. I want you to track some of those fundamental beliefs about money. I call them tribal beliefs, and I say tribal from a family of origin, right? Like your group of origin. It can also be your community, right? It can be a church community, religious community. It could be a cultural or racial group, right? What are the beliefs about money? And because oftentimes when you explore those, you will run into social contracts. What does it mean for you as a Black woman to have lots of money from the perspective of your family of origin, right? What social contracts would you be breaking with your community if you were to acquire a big bag of cash, right? What would it mean? Like what expectations would family have of you? What would they say about you, right? All of those things I want you to be questioning. I want you to look at your family patterns with money and how that affects your patterns with it now. I want you to be, obviously, from what we talked about today, looking at some of how your love relationship patterns show up in your patterns, your relational patterns with money. And where do you feel them in your body? Like when you think about the spirit of money and relating to the spirit of money and allowing the spirit of money to love you and attend to you and care for you and embrace you and hold you, where do you feel that in your body? Where do you notice a charge, right? Or where do you notice hypoarousal, where it's kind of like the energy either kind of drops a little bit, or you feel kind of numb, or you kind of dissociate a little bit, right? And to close, I want to offer like some new narratives. What are the new narratives you'd like to embrace as part of your business, as part of your next level of, right? Like going into your next level of wealth calibration, right? Obviously, it's safe. It's safe for me to receive money. It's safe for me to have money. It's safe for me to enjoy money. I trust myself with money. And after our financial strategy, we'll definitely feel more confident with money. I trust myself to manage my money well. I create opportunities for myself and others with money. Money loves me so much. I attract money. When I'm having fun, I attract even more money. Right. So I want you to play around with some mindset, and really, like, it's not just about saying the words. Mindset for me is not just about saying the words. It's not affirmations. It's about really like breathing them into your body. Like, okay, when you say it's safe for me to receive money, you want to be imagining it. You want to be really taking it in, taking it to that next level and see what shows up for you. All right. I'm excited to hear your experiences around this episode, this class. And yeah, and if it pinged you somewhere, if you felt moved, definitely share it on social media and tag me at Isha_Veva on IG or in Facebook or wherever. Okay, take care. Bye.